In an effort to deter and punish such harmful practices, during his first year in the United States Senate, President Obama introduced legislation that would establish tough criminal penalties for those who engage in fraudulent voting practices and would help to ensure that citizens have complete and accurate information about where and when to vote. Unfortunately, this proposal did not move forward, but I'm pleased to announce that tomorrow, Senator Charles Schumer and Ben Cardin will reintroduce this legislation in an even stronger form. I applaud their leadership, and I look forward to working with them as Congress considers this important legislation. The second area for reform is the need for neutrality in redistricting efforts. Districts should be drawn to promote fair and effective representation for all, not merely to undercut electoral competition and to protect incumbents. If we allow only those who hold elected office to select their constituents, instead of enabling voters to choose their representatives, the strength and legitimacy of our democracy will suffer. One final area for reform that merits our strongest support is the growing effort, which is already underway in several states, to modernize voter registration. Today, the single biggest barrier to voting in this country is our antiquated registration system. According to the Census Bureau, of the 75 million adult citizens who failed to vote in the last presidential election, 60 million of them were not registered and therefore not eligible to cast a ballot. All eligible citizens can and should be automatically registered to vote. The ability to vote is a right. It is not a privilege. Under our current system, many voters must follow cumbersome and needlessly complex voter registration rules. And every election season, state and local officials have to manually process a crush of new applications, most of them handwritten, leaving the system riddled with errors and too often creating chaos at the polls. But fortunately, modern technology provides a straightforward fix for these problems. If we have the political will to bring our election systems into the 21st century, it should be the government's responsibility to automatically register citizens to vote by compiling from databases that already exist a list of all eligible residents in each jurisdiction. Now, of course, these lists would be used solely to administer elections and would protect essential privacy rights. We must also address the fact that although 1 in 9 Americans move every year, their voter registration often does not move with them. Many would-be voters don't realize this until they miss the deadline for registering, which can fall a full month before Election Day. Election officials should work together to establish a program of permanent, portable registration so that voters who move can vote at their new polling place on Election Day. Until that happens, we should implement fail-safe procedures to correct voter roll errors and omissions by allowing every voter to cast a regular, non-provisional ballot on Election Day. Several states have already taken the step, and it's been shown to increase turnout by at least 3 to 5 percentage points. These modernization efforts would not only improve the integrity of our elections, they would also save precious taxpayer dollars. Now, despite these benefits, there will always be those who say that easing registration hurdles will only lead to voter fraud. Now, let me be clear. Voter fraud is not acceptable and will not be tolerated by this Justice Department. But as I learned early in my career as a prosecutor in the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section, where I actually investigated and prosecuted voting fraud cases, making voter registration easier is simply not likely by itself to make our elections more susceptible to fraud. Indeed, those on all sides of this debate have acknowledged that in-person voting fraud is uncommon. We must be honest about this, and we must recognize that our ability to ensure the strength and the integrity of our election systems and to advance the reforms necessary to achieve this depends on whether the American people are informed, engaged, and willing to demand common-sense solutions that make voting more accessible. Now, politicians may not readily alter the very systems under which they were elected. Only we, the people, can bring about meaningful change. So speak out. Raise awareness about what's at stake. Call on our political parties to resist the temptation to suppress certain votes in the hopes of attaining electoral success, and instead encourage and work with the parties to achieve this success by appealing to more voters, and urge policymakers at every level to reevaluate our election systems and to reform them in ways that encourage, not limit, participation. Today, we cannot and we must not take the right to vote for granted, nor can we shirk the sacred responsibility that has fallen upon our shoulders. Throughout his presidency, Lyndon Johnson frequently pointed out, and I quote, "America was the first nation in the history of the world to be founded with a purpose to right wrong and to do justice," unquote. Over the last 2 centuries, the fulfillment of this purpose has taken many forms: acts of protest and compassion, declarations of war and peace, and a range of efforts to make certain that, as another great president said, government of, by, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Today, there are competing visions about how our government should move forward. That's what the democratic process is all about: creating space for thoughtful debate, creating opportunity for citizens to voice their opinions, and ultimately letting the people chart their course. Our nation has worked and even fought to help people around the world establish such a process, most recently during the wave of civil rights uprisings known as the Arab Spring. Here at home, honoring our democracy demands that we remove any and all barriers to voting, a goal that all Americans of all political backgrounds must share. Despite so many decades of struggle, sacrifice, and achievement, we must remain ever vigilant in safeguarding our most basic and important right. Too many recent actions have the potential to reverse the progress that defines us and has made this nation exceptional, as well as an example for all the world. We must be true to the arc of America's history, which compels us to be more inclusive with regard to the franchise. And we must never forget the purpose that more than 2 centuries ago inspired our nation's founding and now must guide us forward. So let us act with optimism and without delay. Let us rise to the challenges and overcome the divisions of our time. Let us signal to the world that in America today, the pursuit of a more perfect union lives on. And in the spirit of Lyndon Baines Johnson, let us continue. Thank you.